You want to meet a longtime newspaper veteran? Stay tuned. Carolina People's bringing them to you. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at the Myrtle Beach Herald. We're focused on freelance writing in the newspaper business, and we're visiting with Jerry Ausband. Good morning, Jerry.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
It is so exciting. So many things going on these days, and to have the opportunity to get you in, an Horry County boy, native of the area who left for a little while and came back. You've been here quite a while, Jerry.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was born in Conway, as most people were in that era. And I was gone for 25 years, and then I came back home, which is what I wanted to do.
Do you still have family here in the area?
Oh, yeah. My family is here. My sister is here. She's a librarian at South Conway Elementary, and she is the only direct relative I have left other than my own family. Mm-hmm. So my mother and father died 10, 15 years ago. So.
What are some of those clear memories you have of growing up in Conway? Anything that really stick out in your mind? Or did you grow? You were born in Conway. Did you actually grow up there? You grew up there.
I sure did. Yeah, went to Conway. Went all the way through Conway High School. As a matter of fact, this next year is my senior class's 50th anniversary.
Oh, come on.
That's right.
50?
50.
Jerry, that would make you like your late 60s.
I am, indeed. I'm 66. I'll be 67 in November.
Excuse me, mid-60s.
Yeah.
You got to be careful, mid, late, you know. My dad's 76. He pumps me up. I'm mid-70s, not late 70s.
But no, it's a fun place. It was a fun place at the time. It was a nice community to grow up in. If it were possible to let every child have that kind of growing up experience, I think it'd be wonderful for the nation, because it seems to me we've changed an awful lot. And but in any event, the preservation of trees there is important. As you may know, trees in the middle of the streets everywhere, and that's great.
You're exactly right.
And not many people do that. So it was a great place to grow up. I went off to college, went to Clemson, and actually finally graduated in 1967. I lacked 3 hours of graduation in '59 when I should have finished. I spent too much time on the college newspaper, and finally got my degree, and it's in mathematical sciences.
What is mathematical sciences?
It is the Bachelor of Arts equivalent of math. It's I was looking at the time to go into maybe into something with NASA or somewhere like that, because my daddy told me that the newspaper business doesn't pay any money, and he was right. He was very right. But I enjoyed college. I enjoyed coming back here. It was delightful to come back and try to give something back to this entire community.
Yeah, Jerry. And you said you were 3 hours short in '59, and did you leave that area for 8 years before finishing?
Well, I went to work at the Greenville News in Greenville, South Carolina, as a reporter, a city reporter, and I enrolled at Furman for summer school, and my Russian class didn't fly. I had a Russian history class that they couldn't fill up, and I forgot what else. But in any event, it took me until 1967 to finally get my last 3 hours.
Wow.
But I got them, and I got my degree. So that's
Jerry, 1959, that means, golly, 45 years ago you went into the actual being paid for it. I know you worked on the college newspaper, you said, there at Clemson.
Yeah, well, my senior year in college, I was on scholarship from the Greenville News.
Really?
They gave scholarships, and I had a year's scholarship, which helped my mother and dad a lot. And I did work for them during the year. I remember a small mini riot that the freshmen got into in one of the hallways. And I wrote a piece on it, and then I got called down to the dean's office as soon as the paper hit the next day. And I said, look, I'm on scholarship, and I'm working for these guys. I'm not being a student when I write this. So and we went round and round. But it was, again, it was just part of the experience.
Now, not to date the other guys, but there are quite a few folks from this area that were up Clemson around the same time you were, or folks that have moved to this area since then. You know, I think of Harry Pavlik, he must have been there around the same time. Dan Gray, Bill Jarvie's a little bit older, not to date Bill there as well, but there are a lot of folks.
Harry played baseball and football.
And football.
Yeah. He played. He's a character, and I know I was talking to him, interviewing him on the phone one day, not too long ago, a couple of years ago, and he said, now listen, I said, what game was it in which, I forgot something, I think it's the first game he played, he got 100 and some odd yards running.
No.
As a halfback. And so he said, well, yeah, it was, I can't remember who it was, and I looked it up. I had a stat sheet from Clemson, and I said, it was North Carolina. He said, I hate them. We always did, but I guess at Clemson we hated everybody except ourselves. But anyway.
Yeah, Death Valley.
Death Valley. And it was interesting. Clemson has no journalism. And,
is that right?
Except one guy, Dr. John Lane, produced a class at 4 o'clock on Thursday afternoons that any member of the student media could take 4 times.
Wow.
It was mostly grammar and spelling and that sort of stuff. But that's what the college gave us is 4 credits in effect for being on student media. So that's the only medium, the only course.
That's fascinating. That's very interesting. Of course, the school that Harry hates, North Carolina, has such a strong journalism program. And of course, Harry wasn't a journalist. Probably care less about certain aspects of that.
Yeah, he said, I'd rather be North Carolina almost than anybody except maybe South Carolina. But anyway, Harry's a fine fellow. I enjoy him. He's a nice guy.
Cherry, it must have been fun coming back. Of course, after Greenville, you were down in Columbia for a while with the State.
I was in the State. I actually started with the Greenville News, and I ran a bureau in Greenwood for 4 years. Mm-hmm. And then I went to the State and sat in Florence for a couple of years before I went to Columbia, back to Columbia, mm-hmm. and did a regular bit of desk work up there as an editor. And,
right.
Then I moved on to Shelby, North Carolina, as editor of the Shelby Daily Star, mm-hmm. And I was there until I came back here in '79.
You were there for 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
When a viewer hears the word editor, will you just break down real quick a couple of those major positions, let's say in a daily newspaper like these
Sure.
You've been associated with the State or, of course, the Sun News, where you were for many, many years. Break down the publisher, editor, editorial page editor, managing editor. What are some of those positions, and how are they laid out? What does a viewer need to get from that?
The publisher is the only person who has overall control, ownership, management of the entire newspaper.
Okay.
There are many departments: advertising, production, news, circulation. There's so many departments. Each one of those has a department head. In the newsroom, generally speaking, it's the editor or the executive editor who has charge of the newsroom. Mm-hmm. Then there is a managing editor who does most of the day-to-day managing of staff, and the editorial page editor usually writes or guides the editorial page, okay. With the editorial board, which is usually the publisher and editor. In addition, then there's a city editor. Right. There may be a news editor who handles the layout of the paper. Mm-hmm. There is a copy editor who reads copy and
that's looking for grammatical errors or other errors.
Hopefully, right. We'll find those.
Yeah.
Not always, but it's harder to read on a computer than it is on in written mm-hmm. sheets. Mm-hmm. It's I prefer to read and edit on written sheets mm-hmm. rather than on mm-hmm. computer. It's more difficult to find spaces missing and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But we make do. Within the newsroom is separate from the rest of the newspaper. There is no real relationship between the newsroom and, in particular, advertising. Just because you advertise doesn't mean you get a story.
Right, right.
And there is more of a relationship between the news and circulation departments, because circulation usually sits in on the news budget every afternoon about 4:30 or 5,
Right.
and decide, and sometimes they input what's going to be on the front page tomorrow, so we can sell more from the racks. Now, sometimes that will be part of it, but it's generally speaking, the newsroom is a little cloistered unto itself.
Well, you talk about two positions that potentially overlap. There's a managing editor. You said, and so that person's over both the advertising people as
no, just over the newsroom.
Over the
newsroom. The editor is in overall charge of the newsroom.
Right.
But in the case of the editor at a newspaper like the Sun News, the editor also has some administrative duties.
Right.
Because the editor is a vice president of the company.
Right.
So she has, in this case, she has a few other duties that keep her occupied, as well as the newsroom itself. The managing editor really handles the daily budgeting of news copy and that sort of thing.
And then on a paper, even if we weren't talking about the Sun News, the Greenville News or the state newspaper, that publisher has a difficult line to walk, overseeing, as you said, both advertising and the newsroom.
That's correct.
And potentially the difficulties associated with, as you said, you can't buy a story. You can't give more money and get good coverage.
No, you can't.
No matter what community you're in. If you're doing something improper, you're going to get, someone's going to point it out. Particularly as the record keeper of the community. And the Daily really serves that role.
It has to take a different kind, newsroom has to take a different kind of approach to any kind of issue in town. It really cannot be and should not be on one side or another. It's got to give fair shakes to both. And that means not giving extraordinary shakes to the advertiser, but also it means that where a non-advertiser involved, you got to make sure you're not being ugly to that, or is including him in some kind of roundup story.
That's a very good point. Well, you always wonder about that as it would relate to a publisher, let's say at the state, how that person, how they're able to step back when a news story is going after a critical advertiser, let's say a top 5 advertiser. What do you do as a publisher? Do you just not get involved at all, or are you fully aware of all the activities so that you know how to let the guy know, hey, or a man or woman, business owner know, sorry, this is a legitimate story, they're going after it. How does the publisher stand back?
The publisher has to stand back. He has to let that news side carry the ball. He can try to hold the guy's hand that you've got on the front page. He can do all of that. But if he is a good publisher, he will simply not get involved in the news function. It is just as he might not get involved in some other function, but news function is the one where most of the problem comes.
Jerry, you were at the Sun News for 22 years.
That's
79,
correct.
You retired in 2001.
That's right.
Share with the viewers a little bit. Obviously, the bulk of our viewers are in the PD and southeastern North Carolina. Less than a third of our viewers are in Horry County. But just from that perspective of some of the growth, surely a lot of our PD area viewers and southeastern North Carolina viewers come to Myrtle Beach and Horry County or Georgetown County on a regular basis, or Brunswick County.
Right.
Share with viewers a little bit about some of that growth over from 79 to 01, looking at it from a daily perspective.
Well, the growth has come in spurts. In the mid-'80s, we just grew like all get out. It was just absolutely phenomenal what kind of growth we had. And at the time I left, we'd gotten up to, I think around 60, 65,000 daily, and more than that on Sundays.
Oh, yeah.
So that apparently that growth has been a little bit stifled lately, or it appears to me. They certainly had to draw in because of after 9/11,
Right.
They had to draw into all newspapers did. They lost advertising and so forth and so on, and so they just pulled in their horns a little bit and had to. But it's the growth demands more people, and that and newsprint is where the cost of the news business is.
Well, of course, for a daily, you've got not only the newsprint cost, the printing cost, you've got the circulation cost, getting them out to the boxes, getting them out to people's homes. I mean, it just seems incredible, Jerry, the amount of turn in the room. What was your day like working with a daily? And of course, whether it's the position there in Shelby as the associate editor-in-chief, or at the Sun News from 79 to 01, the involvement there. What was your day like?
Well, I usually got in around 7:30, quarter of 8, and worked until the work was done. Whenever that, and it may be going home and getting on my home computer and continuing my work day, just to have a little bit of time with my family. But it's a very busy, very busy. There's a deadline. There was a book about the Associated Press called Deadline Every Minute, and that's exactly what the newspaper business is.
Wow.
It's one of the worst things to get used to when you retire, is not having a deadline.
Yeah.
Because you don't, you know that at 4:30 you got to have a news budget meeting. At 1 o'clock you got to have a staff meeting. Your day is pretty well planned out.
Every day.
Every day.
Every day. And what do y'all do on the weekends?
Saturday.
Yeah. What do y'all do on the? How is the Sunday paper, for instance? When is much of that put together? A Saturday paper.
Friday.
Much like in the television business, we put together our schedules for Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, all on Thursday and Friday.
The Saturday the Sunday overall paper, the Coastal Living and several other sections are done pretty early in the week. Actually, you start getting Wednesday deadlines for earlier sections, and sections that have to have some breaking news in them, like sports.
Yeah.
The news sections, the two news sections, and I think we've gone back and forth on whether or not business and opinion is a Friday run or a Saturday run, but in any event, it's usually an advanced run, and all that's beginning to put together with the inserts, the advertising inserts, and the television log, and the other items that go in that Sunday paper are starting to be inserted during the week, inserting one another and inserting covers and that sort of thing. Right. So that starts pretty early in the week. I guess we really start on the week before and assigning feature stories for the fronts and that sort of thing.
Golly, Jerry, so many amazing things happen in the community. And, of course, after retiring from the Sun News in 01, you've done some other projects, some freelance editing, freelance writing. I know you'd helped out with publication when you were with us a year and a half ago over there at the train depot in Conway, helping out around Myrtle Beach for a little while, and obviously doing some freelance writing for the Myrtle Beach Herald, which has been spectacular, covering the South Strand.
I've really enjoyed getting back into business with Herald. It's been a lot of fun. It's a business you really can't get rid of from your life. Because of deadlines, because it's what you enjoy doing. I think you stay in journalism because it's enjoyable.
Your wife, Lorna, pointed that out to me. And, of course, our guest yesterday morning, Murph Four, or Dr. Marilyn Four from Horry Georgetown Tech, who works with your wife, had said just that. You know, Lorna had said it's great to see Jerry moving and shuffling and even focused on South Strand stuff. Because a lot of it's county-specific. Horry County, some amazing things you've been covering recently. Some of the county educational side, a lot hopping right now.
Yes, indeed, there is. And I think it will continue. The growth in this county and in Georgetown County, both are just phenomenal. They're having all kinds of growth problems down in Georgetown. We've got growth problems here, growth issues. I would hate to see growth stop. I think if it stops, it'll want to start again. So I would like to see it managed a little better, but it's growing. Everything's growing, and that causes all kinds of problems, like the oyster beds down in Georgetown County, which when it rains, they become polluted.
Right.
And oysters have to unpollute themselves. They filter their own water. And kick back out fresh water. That's
a great point. I wasn't aware of that. So you got to have a little time before you begin pulling them out.
That's why DHEC will issue warnings about shelling in the inlet. Right. And they have some public lands down there, and they have some that leased out to commercial dealers. But it's all the same thing. All those commercial land fields are beds, I should say, are out further nearer the ocean than the public beds, and so they don't get as much pollution that stuff coming off the land.
I've seen a lot of that. You know, my house in Murrells Inlet's very close to Cedar Hill Landing, which is now Nance's.
Right.
You did a story on that a few weeks back, the Nance's Cedar Hill restaurant, I think. Or Nance is kind of small because, of course, a mile up the road is the original Nance's, I guess, which is the same folks.
Well, they've sold that.
Yeah,
About 10 years
excuse me,
ago.
they sold it. That's
Yeah.
right. But they're
Yeah.
folks who've launched this most recently.
That's right. Yeah.
Very interested in reading that story, and of course, even just last week in the Herald, your piece about some of the development across the street, and that the land that Burson Chapin had sold off about 5 years ago to the guy, and his idea is to develop that area. It's such a fascinating area that I don't know if you're aware of that little enclave down at the end, that dirt road, Ori Drive, has
Yes.
a very large share of Burson Chapin stock. A lot of the shareholders of Burson Chapin live on that little dirt road, and so they're very interested in obviously what's developed around that area.
Right.
It stayed pretty dang quiet down there for a long time.
Well, the problem is that land's giving out,
Yeah.
and when land gives out, then you start getting more of those problems because you get it's a matter of density.
Yeah.
How many houses you're going to put on an acre?
Sure.
How much land have you got? How much setbacks? That sort of thing. What kind of architecture is it going to blend in with what's already there? There's so many issues, and that's some of what Murrells Inlet's now getting into. Of course, Murrells Inlet is a terribly diverse area. It's not only the fishing village where the restaurants are and a lot of homes,
Right.
but across the U.S. 17 bypass, of course, is a couple of Wachesaw East and Wachesaw,
Right.
both of which are just delightful upscale developments,
Absolutely.
and getting huge.
And bordering up on Brook Green Gardens, and obviously 707 with Prince Creek and all the development back there.
That's right.
Incredible opportunities.
And that's
for
really
PPC.
Garden City, you know.
Is that right?
Murrells Inlet only goes to the Georgetown, to the Horry County line.
Now, Mount Gilead kind of considers themselves a part of Murrells Inlet.
Well, they're half in Georgia. They're partially. They were
They've all
in
been
Georgia.
pulled into Horry.
That's right. They're
Yeah.
now in Horry County, and it's really. All of us have. I live in Garden City as well.
Right.
All of us have Murrells Inlet addresses.
Is that right?
But those in Sacastee have Myrtle Beach addresses. So So it's a lot. It's a lot of confusion about that. But generally speaking, the folks in Murrells Inlet consider us the heathens up here in Horry County because we got a lot of neon and glitz and that sort of stuff. Except they were talking the other day at a board meeting I was of Murrells Inlet 2007. I was at that meeting, and they were concerned because there were so many people in Myrtle Beach, and not many of them are coming to the inlet. So now it may be the foot and shoe may be turning a little bit.
Yeah, some of the guys, Mickey Spillane, someone will change that. And of course, you know, it used to be so funny with Chad Prosser living in Mount Gilead. You got this gigantic 1,296 square mile county, and the chairman's living in the furthest corner right up on Georgetown County line. So you think about that, and I'm sure, folks, that it's just a very interesting thing. We got a couple of minutes, Jerry. And of course, we think today is the Volunteer Appreciation Luncheon over at the Chamber. Big day. VolunteerOfTheYear.com went live today. So viewers can go check out Volunteer of the Year. Of course, the Best of the Year ballots came out in the Herald today, obviously only for subscribers. So a lot of our subscribers in the PD in southeastern North Carolina can fortunately look out for the Best of the Year ballot today. But another big thing kicked off last week. The United Way campaign kicked off last Friday, I think.
Absolutely. For a long time, United Way was the only countywide organization in Horry County. Everything else was sort of kept to itself, all the little enclaves. And now, United Way has led the way to countywide organizations all over now. And it is just wonderful because it collects money and then allocates them. And I do mean there's a rigorous allocation process. I've been on those boards, those committees several times. And there's no question left unturned and no stone left unturned by that. It's a wonderful thing. Everybody ought to be involved with that. 35 charities are involved, and so when you give there, that's 35 times you're not going to get asked otherwise.
That's right, Jerry. Real quick, I know I didn't ask you that early on. Is there a good number to call for a viewer to learn about the United Way, or to give you a ring? Or
you can give me a ring. I'm listed, and the United Way is also listed in the phone book.
Right.
So it's United Way of Horry County,
okay.
And they're located between Conway and Myrtle Beach, off of 501.
Right.
And I'm sorry, I don't remember the telephone number.
I know, I should have asked you that earlier. Forgive me. You're doing so many things out on the front line for the United Way, and I know it's incredible to think about the commitment that reaches out, where they're stretching out in the community. We're prayerfully hopeful they'll have a successful campaign. Congratulations on the kickoff.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Stay tuned to more Carolina People with Jerry Ausband coming up next. If you've been sitting with us the last 30 minutes, you know the excitement of a local boy growing up, born and bred, raised in Conway, stayed in Conway for a long time, but headed up to the upstate. Somehow the independent republic pulled him back. He has stayed here, even on the south end of the beach, for quite a long time. He remains in the community. Community service is what it's all about, whether it's providing news to the community, keeping the community abreast of ongoing activities, either from the South Strand or the center of Myrtle Beach. If you were sitting here the last 30 minutes, you would have learned a little bit about how the pulse of the community works. Daily newspaper editing in the newsroom, and so much going on, but community and weekly newspapers do a very similar thing. They continue to make a difference, and Jerry's doing that every day.